Allegory, a narrative that has a literal or surface meaning and another metaphorical meaning. This would be the handkerchief, which represents not only Desdemona and Othello's relationship, but the distrust they have between them once Desdemona loses it. Allusion, any reference to a person, place, event, or character in history, literature, or mythology. Iago often references the devil, to the point that literary scholars often think that Iago represents the devil. Catastrophe, the concluding action of a tragedy. We see catastrophe not only with Iago, who is sentenced to death, but with Othello and Desdemona, who are killed by each other. Catharsis, the purification of emotions at the end of the play. In Othello, the catharsis happens when Othello kills himself after realizing that Iago had tricked him into killing his wife Desdemona. Characters, living beings in a work of fiction. Characters in Othello include Othello, Desdemona, Iago, Cassio, and Roderigo. Climax, the high point of emotional intensity. After Othello kills Desdemona, he finds out that Iago had betrayed him into killing her. This leads to their final battle. Comic relief, a humorous scene, incident, or speech in the course of a serious fiction or drama. In Act 3, Scene 1, the clown and Cassio enter the scene, and the clown plays on words, offering the audience comic relief. Complication, smaller actions or events which confound and compound the original problem. Roderigo is Iago's overall complication. Throughout the course of the story, he causes many minor events which lead ultimately to Iago's downfall. Conceit, a fanciful notion or conception striking similarities between two dissimilar things. Iago convinces Othello that Cassio is sleeping with his wife Desdemona by getting Cassio to talk about his lover Bianca, who Othello mistakes in conversation as Desdemona. Connotation, the suggested or emotional meaning of a word as compared with its dictionary definition. Iago uses connotation to confuse Othello into thinking Cassio and Desdemona are sneaking off behind his back. Context, the setting or frame of reference in which an event takes place, goes hand in hand with setting, a combination of locale, historical period, season, or hour. In this context, it is Cyprus, Greece, around 1500 to 1750, in the midst of a war with the Turks. Crisis, the turning point for better or worse in a play. This occurs when Othello finally thinks that Desdemona is cheating on him. Denouement, falling action or conclusion of the plot. This occurs when Othello finally kills himself. Effect, the impression made by a literary work on a reader or society. Othello's effect is used as a cautionary tale to not always trust so blindly. Hamartia, the tragic flaw or error of judgment. Othello's trusting of Iago turns into his tragic flaw, resulting in the death of not only Othello, but Desdemona and Iago. Invocation, an address to a god or muse whose aid is sought. Iago invokes Janus, the two-faced god, cluing the audience in to Iago's two-sidedness. Mood, the atmosphere or emotional effect generated by the words, images, situations in a literary work. The overall mood of Othello is suspicion, which Iago plants into all the characters' minds, causing them to not trust anyone but him. Plot, the action, that which happens in a literary work. Iago feels cheated by Othello when he gets demoted to the rank of ancient within the army. Iago then goes about destroying Othello's life, resulting in the death of Othello and his wife Desdemona. Recognition, the moment when a chief character recognizes the happy or awful truth. In this case, it is awful, when Othello finds out that Iago had tricked him into killing Desdemona. Reversal, the thrilling change of luck for the protagonist at the last moment. This occurs to Iago, and Othello finally figures him out. Socratic irony, pretending to be ignorant when in fact the character is being cautious or tentative. Iago uses this when he intentionally withholds information from Othello, making it seem like Iago does not want to in fact share information when Iago wants nothing more than to tell Othello how unfaithful Cassio and Desdemona are being. Tone, the writer's or speaker's attitude toward his subject, audience, or himself. Iago is the speaker in this story and the protagonist, and he often has a cynical tone towards everything and anything. Tragedy, a serious fiction involving the downfall of a hero or heroine. This play is considered a tragedy because the protagonist, antagonist, and the antagonist's lover all die. Tragic flaw, in a tragedy, the defect in the hero that leads to the downfall. Othello, being the hero, is far too trusting of Iago, which leads ultimately to both of their deaths. Verbal irony, contrast between what is stated and what is suggested. Iago uses this technique when he says, "I think." This makes it seem as if Iago is unsure and has no evidence proving contrary that Cassio and Desdemona are not, in fact, being unfaithful, convincing Othello that they are being unfaithful. Tragic irony, the most noble and most deserving person, because of the very grounds of their excellence, dies in defeat. Iago's excellence in manipulating people ultimately leads to his downfall, as he gets ahead of himself with where he wants the story to turn.